Israel had no choice but to declare war on Hamas for perpetrating the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust. But it doesn't have a blank check signed in Palestinian blood to commit repeated atrocities without accountability, especially now that members of Netanyahu's own government are calling out his failure to explain the Israeli endgame.
They're all crazy.
So the very many people on both sides have attacked me for saying that. My question is simply this: what exactly is wrong with having a moral conscience about innocent people suffering?
Yeah,
More importantly, where is yours? Well, joining me now to debate this, journalist and broadcaster Emily Austin, Palestinian-American commentator Omar Badr, and the host of Part of the Problem podcast, Dave Smith. Well, Dave, let me start.
Nah, Dave Smith is the fucking best, man. Follow him. He's a great comic, and he's the smartest motherfucker I've ever heard.
With you, actually. A lot of people are part of the problem, it seems to me. The longer this war has gone on, the more entrenched people have got into their various tribes, and it's got increasingly toxic. There's no admission by anyone in those tribes of any wrongdoing on their side, and there's no attempt to come across the bridge and forge any kind of settlement, resolution, or peace. It seems to me like we are entering a really depressing phase of all this war. What is your view?
Well, I can't disagree with any of that. It's certainly depressing. I mean, listen, this has been going on since October. We're 9 months into this thing now, so it's been depressing for a while. And I agree with everything you said in your opening, that, of course, perpetrating violence against innocent civilians is wrong, no matter who does it. And that ought to be the basis for Western civilization. I mean, especially for people who like to kind of brag about Western civilization and the aspects where it's superior to others. The thing here, though, right, is that, as you say, Israel doesn't just have a blank check signed in Palestinian blood, but objectively, the reality seems to be that they do, and that they have unconditional support from the United States of America, the global superpower, no matter what. Even if our own president asks them not to do something and they do it, they still continue to receive this unconditional support. And of course, but as I've said to you before, Pierce, and I think this has kind of been the fundamental truth throughout this entire conflict, is that the only way you can really support Israel in what they're doing is if on some fundamental level you value Israeli life more than you value Palestinian life.
Okay, and
if that's your starting point, fine. But if that's not your starting point, then you don't look at a mission that got 4 Israelis back and killed a bunch of children as a success.
Well, you see, that's where I have a real... Again, I've used this phrase many times in this war, a moral quandary, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, the quandary.
Should there be any limit, given that Hamas kidnapped these people, kidnapped young women, they kidnapped babies, they kidnapped Holocaust survivors, as well as murdering and wounding thousands and thousands of people? Should there be any limit to what Israel should be able to do militarily to rescue those hostages? From all the footage coming out, they planned this because they had information about where they were being held. They then sent special forces in to get them, came under heavy, heavy fire, and as a result of that, there were air cover sent in as well. And I'm just curious, what should be the limit on Israel to go and rescue these innocent kidnapped hostages?
Well, I mean, look, the limit should be, you know, in general, what the limit over this conflict should be is that if your number one priority is to get back the hostages, I think this whole campaign would have been conducted in a very different way than it has been over the last 9 months. But, you know, look, what's wrong, the essence of what makes it immoral to take these hostages is that these are innocent people who did not do anything to forfeit their natural God-given rights. But that also has to apply to innocent Palestinians who were not involved in October 7th or had no blood on their hands, were not members of Hamas militant groups. And these are, and we're describing millions of people who fall into that category. And so, you know, in an ideal world, the limit would be that you could only go after those people who were directly responsible. Now, in war, that's rarely the case, that there are no innocent casualties. However, I think a reasonable approach would be to expect Israel to do what they always claim that they're doing, which is just a blatant lie, which is that we're doing everything we can to avoid civilian casualties.
Okay.
But very clearly, that's not been how they've been conducting this war.
All right, Emily, let me bring you in here. I mean, look, I was joyous when I saw that the...
Now, you have to notice, I know I look all blue, The Israelis always bring beautiful women, somebody who speaks fluent English. They try to mesmerize the viewer, or distract him with the lie that person is saying. Now, I need you guys to calm the fuck down. She's pretty. She does look beautiful, but she's talking for a criminal entity. The Zionist criminal. So listen to what she say and digest the words and understand them, okay?
These hostages have been rescued, particularly Noah Agamani, whose story touched the world. Seeing this beautiful young woman being taken off on a motorbike, absolutely desperate with fear, and we all feared the worst for her.
She looked healthy as
and
fuck.
then the added human dimension of her mother having incurable brain cancer. And very sadly, it appears she's too far gone with the cancer now to even really understand what has happened with her daughter coming home, and wanted to live until she did get home. So the whole thing was tragic, but has the joy of her obviously being rescued. But when you look at these numbers, I mean, think about the Palestinian Health Authority numbers, is that historically, going back before October the 7th for decades,
correct,
or several decades anyway, when these figures released by the Palestinian Health Authority, which is Hamas-run, have been verified independently, they've come back as reasonably accurate. I mean, not completely, but reasonably accurate numbers. We don't know whether these are reasonably accurate, the ones they're putting out now, but Israel admits to killing at least 100 people. We don't know how many of those are Hamas. And they say 274. Either way, it's clear from the scenes at the hospital that there have been a lot of women and children, innocent people, clearly, caught up in this. And so the same question for you, really. Yes, I'm joyous at the return of hostages. Yes, I think Israel.
All right, that's a
absolutely has a
fucking.
right
That's
to go
not
and
a
get
question,
them.
man.
But
That's
at what cost
that's
to
an essay right
innocent Palestinian
Monologue.
life?
Oof. She doesn't give a fuck.
What's interesting about these debates that end up becoming pretty chaotic is that everyone expects usually the Zionists, and I can't speak for anyone but myself, to be unapologetic about Palestinian casualties. Now, that's not me. That will never be me because I'm not a monster. Now,
All right,
of
now listen
course,
to her carefully.
Israel needs to do its best job to protect innocent civilians. Now, when I say innocent civilians, I don't mean the journalists or op-ed writers that are keeping hostages in their home. If you're complicit in keeping hostages or you're complicit in terrorism, to me, you're not a civilian, you're a terrorist as well.
I agree.
Now, with that being said, at the same time, my point is never, in my life, I will never say the Palestinians deserve it. This is what they get because of Hamas. My point is always the same. All of the blood spilled on both sides of this conflict are Hamas's fault. It's only Hamas to blame, because if it wasn't for October 7th.
So the whole idea is just you got to blame the victim. That's like saying, well, she got raped because she should have been dressed like that. If she hadn't wearing shorts or skirts, she would never been raped. You blame the victim. The problem is the fucking occupation. You motherfuckers need to get the fuck off their land. That's it. Stop stealing their homes. You need to go back to Europe. That's it. Get out. Go. Go away. Where you came from? You're taking 78% of the land. You're still stealing from the 22% left. And you're telling me it's Hamas. The problem is Hamas. No, this is a resistance to an occupation. Under human rights, international law, under God's law, forget about international law, they have every right to resist. And they're going to continue. Whether you get rid of Hamas, there are going to be other different organizations until you come to terms with your occupation. If you want to live in peace, you will make that journey and give them their state that you're occupying, and you live on the one side, 2 states, everybody's happy. If you continue to think you're going to steal their land and push them into ghettos and not expect something in return, you're fucking psychotic. That's what it is. Good.
The idea for not being Gaza. If it wasn't for the hostages being in civilians' apartments, guess what, Piers? There'd be no civilian casualties. And I also want to point out one thing, just a food for thought. Is it only IDF bullets that penetrate? Excuse me, does Hamas not fire back? Do you think Hamas is not responsible for casualties as well? So my point is never that it's justified. It's always the same. Every ounce of blood spilled needs to be blamed on Hamas, and the world needs to put international pressure on Hamas, because if the
you got to blame the Hamas. They have F-35s, they have F-16s, they have Apaches, They have houses. They have the best tanks in the world. I mean, it's Hamas. That's what it is. It's not the settlers who stood on the land. It's not it's not them. It's Hamas. It's the people. Because why are they still alive?
Hostages were released time and time again. This war could have ended. Instead, where do they put them? In a refugee camp to maximize the casualties that everyone's going to face.
Okay,
and that is
before
why
I go to Omar, I do think it's very disingenuous when I hear the argument, if Hamas just released the hostages, this war would be over. Israel's stated mission is not just to get the hostages back, it's to eliminate Hamas. So
Correct.
Getting the hostages back is one part of it, but it's not. It is just not true to say if they handed them all back tomorrow, Netanyahu would not want the remaining Hamas terrorists to still be there. He would continue, as he'd made very clear, to execute this war until he got rid of all of Hamas. So I just don't think it's
unreasonable. Did America not want Al Qaeda dead after 9/11?
You know, I'm just saying it's not right though. No, that's true, but I'm just saying it's not accurate. When I hear pro-Israeli guests say, well, if they just handed back the hostages, it'd be over. That it's not as simple as that. It wouldn't be over.
I'm saying it would minimize civilian casualties. Of course, you want to eradicate Hamas, because if you don't, October 7th will be December 7th, will be February 7th, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
my issue is that they make sure, Hamas makes sure to maximize the civilian casualties. And for some reason, the blame goes so.
No, ladies and gentlemen, Gaza is about 350 square miles. That's like a small fucking area. There's about 2.5 million people. It's all residential. It doesn't have any mountain. The whole area is residential. Whatever's left of it. Now, not only have you fucking destroyed 70% of that city, and you're complaining it's a civilian area. There is no other area to go. It's all civilian areas. You understand?
Solely on the IDF.